Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to introduce a new library that we're going to be using for our API. This library is called Flask, and it is a very popular library in Python across the whole industry really, because it's really lightweight and really easy and fast to develop web applications and APIs with it. So this library is not only used for APIs, but it has a lot more functionality that lets you develop full-blown web applications using it very easily. So in this section we're going to be creating this weblog app that is really going to be a full-blown website that will interact with our database and do everything that you'd expect a blog to do. And we're going to do that right here in this section, and it's going to actually be a lot easier than you may have thought before. So the first thing to do is to create the source folder. I've already created a virtual environment for this project and you should do the same. So create your source folder and then you'll have your init.py here. Go on new Python file and I'm going to call it app.py. So the first thing we have to do now is import the Flask framework. But before we do that, we'll have to go into our project and create a new file which will be the requirements.txt file. Here we want to write Flask == 0.10.0. Remember, Flask has a capital F here. And then we'll go back to our app and then it'll tell us that we have to install it. So we can do that. And then once that's installed, we can begin using the Flask library. So there it goes. And that's installed. And now we can say from Flask import Flask. Notice how this has a capital F, which means this is a class that we're importing. And now we can use this class to define our app. So we're going to tell Python that we are creating a Flask application. And in order to do that, we have to create an object of this Flask class. So we'll say app equals Flask __ name __. So what does this mean? Well, __ name __, that's kind of difficult to say. So name with 2 underscores on each side essentially is a built-in variable, sort of private variable in Python, and what it contains is essentially this. If we are running the application directly. So it's a bit difficult to understand, but don't worry about it very much, really. That's the only thing to say. Basically what this says is that we are giving the app a name which is something that Python determines for us, and that can also be used to decide whether we are running the app directly from like a terminal or something like that or not. So it is a bit confusing, but we really don't have to worry about it at all. It doesn't affect us at all. Okay, so now we've defined our app, we can actually begin creating the API endpoints that are going to be used. So let's create a simple one. We simply say the @ app.route, and then here we put the endpoint. So I'm going to put just an empty endpoint here, just a /. And what that means is you would be going to www.mysite.com/API. So this would be the endpoint that we are creating here. And then we can define a method that will execute when we access that endpoint. So we can do something like that. So what this does is it defines an endpoint, which is an empty endpoint. And then when we access that endpoint with our browser, or when our mobile app or our desktop app accesses this endpoint, then this method will run. And what this method will do is it'll simply return the words hello world. There is one last thing we have to do in order to be able to run this Flask app, which is to say if name == main, then say app.run. So this is what I meant before with all the explanation about what the main is. So basically what we're doing here is if we are running the app and expecting it to initialize and start from 0, then we'll will actually run the app. And if the app is running as part of a separate process or something like that, then we will not run the app, and instead we'll leave it to that other process to run the app. So really not something you have to worry about. This is simply a requirement to run our app, really. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click the app and press Run. And we can see the address is already in use because I've got a lot of other things running as well. So the first line is that the app is running on here, 127.0.0.1, and then colon 5000. So I've already got something else running on this port 5000. So what we can say is run on port 4995, for example. And then we'll press play again. Now notice how now it's running on 127.0.0.1 colon 4995. So let's access that and see what happens. So here I'm bringing in the window here, and notice how I've accessed the address 127.0.0.1 colon 4995, and the words hello world are coming out. And here in our logs we can see that the get keyword is coming here, and we've got this empty route first. So that empty route is the one we defined up here, and then we've returned the words hello world, which is what we've gotten here on our browser. So this is how the API works, and you've seen this is really not that complicated. You simply define the route or the route of your application interface, and then you define the method that will execute when something accesses that endpoint, and then that executes, and that's it. So that's how you can define something that will interface with something else. So we could define a route, for example, that will be /users/user ID, and then when we access that endpoint, we would get the information pertaining to that user. But obviously this all will sound a bit abstract until we actually start doing a lot of more things with it. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next few videos, and in fact in this section overall. So stick with me and let's move on to the next one, and everything is going to be a lot clearer. I'll see you there.